Welcome to the Emblazing Leaders podcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Talisa Sullivan. Join me as we hear from leaders across diverse fields around the world. So on today, we have Dr. Judy White, the former superintendent of Riverside County Office of Education. She was, I'll say, because she's retired, the first Black African American, however she identifies, superintendent in Riverside County. She is also the CEO of MOSAIC Legacy, which I kind of helped co-find. Or do I say co-found or co-find? And so I'd love to hear, before we start in our questions, just to have Dr. Judy White tell us more about herself. Dr. White, can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Sullivan for inviting me for this opportunity to talk about leadership and a little bit about myself. The community calls me a history maker and a stereotype breaker. And the reason that is because I've been the first either woman, African American, or both in many roles. It actually started out in high school. I was the first female elected as an ASB president. Back in those days, they didn't have females. And so I remember being the first one, and a teacher coming in to me and saying, are you sure you want to run? And girls don't run. And I'm like, well, they don't run. Is it because they can't run? Is it law? And he said no. So that was the beginning. But I did win and earn an academic scholarship to Occidental College, where I got my BA there. I've also attended UC Riverside, UC Irvine, Cal State San Bernardino, and Azusa Pacific, earning various degrees. Born in Los Angeles, raised in San Bernardino, but just so proud to have served as a teacher, a principal, an assistant superintendent, a local superintendent, and a county superintendent. And while Dr. Sullivan didn't mention I was the first Black to hold that role, I think I got more applause from being the first female in that role. And so that's been my leadership journey. Never wanted to stick with the titles, but what is the impact that I could make in those roles?
Thank you for that question, for answering that question and giving us more about you, Dr. White. We're going to dig right into the questions. And when you said first, it reminded me of a podcast that I was just on. Someone invited me on a podcast, but they invited me with another colleague,
Mhm.
and they were like, "You are the first." And I actually thought about you. I was like, "Ooh, I get to be the first or something." So we were the first duo. They had
Okay.
everybody in singles. We were the first
Nice.
duo. So I'm following your footsteps almost, kind of. So
Okay.
thank you. So let's get right into it. Tell me about your leadership journey. What would you say has shaped you as a leader? Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
I think as a leader, you want to decide what type of leader are you going to be. And early on in my journey, I decided to be a servant leader. And being a servant leader means you're anticipating what the needs are of the people you are serving and responding to them so that they're able to receive whatever their need is. On this journey, like I said, serving in all those roles at leadership at the local level and the county level, you've faced many challenges. You've had to make many decisions because of the fact you have to are the decision maker. And whenever you're the first, though, there's a little bit of pressure. There's some pressure to see, okay, is her leadership going to be different? Is it going to be better or worse? And I've always said, be an effective leader that you can measure your success by, that there are goals you have specifically set and you've met those goals and you've celebrated those goals and built capacity. So that's been my journey in many other roles, just being a servant leader.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm glad to hear you talk about being a servant leader. I actually follow a lot of what you do, and you are absolutely 100% one of the best servant leaders that I've ever experienced. I always hear people saying, "Well, Dr. White help me with this." And I'm like, how does she have time to help everybody? So thank you for that. So the next question, if you can share a story about a time when you overcame a significant odds to achieve a major victory in your leadership journey.
I'm going to go with something that was more recent, and that was during COVID. Now, if you know that during COVID, the governor had called all the county superintendents in to tell us that they were going to close the schools the next week.
Mm.
So we only had a few days to actually get communication out and get things in place. Now, although the schools were going to be closed, everybody was not in agreement with that. And there were many, I got nasty notes, I got threats about my role, and all I was doing is delivering a message
Mhm.
from the governor. However, you want to make sure in any situation, help people understand the why you're making a decision. The other thing is you want to anticipate if there's any unintended impacts so that you can address them before they happen. And then use a challenging opportunity to unite people. So I started this thing called Everybody Gets One, and we needed to make sure that every single student in Riverside County, we had 430,000 students, would receive a device. Because our charge was to make sure that learning continued
Mhm.
and that the children were fed. Those were the two things we were given. And so, with the learning continued, you had to make sure that they had the devices since everything was going to technology. And when we analyzed it, out of the 430,000, the districts were providing many, but we still were short. Short to the point that we needed to raise $10 million.
Wow.
And we did. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy one for a student. And will you join me? So different people started saying, buy one for them. But then when we went to the Board of Supervisors, they actually gave us the $10 million that was needed. So when you are a leader, you have to be able to not be afraid to ask for help on the journey. You have to know what you need, and you also have to have some data behind it because we did our assessment. So that the COVID times, I think, was one of the challenging times. And again, how did we do? We made sure we helped to develop a plan of action to go back into school, and we helped districts understand they needed to help each other. There were some districts that teachers had been on computers forever. They were already had one-on-one devices.
Mhm.
There were some districts, kid you not, teachers had not even done an email. So, but they were matched up, the districts who knew and the districts who were learning,
Mhm.
and then the teachers started helping the teachers online. And to me, that was one of the greatest successes of addressing a challenge.
Wow. I loved hearing about that. A couple things that kind of stood out for me as I listened to you speak and ask for help and
Hmm.
use data.
Yes.
And so the reason why those like are really personal for me, well, first, the ask for help is because I feel like I'm one of those leaders that I can do it, I can do it. And sometimes I don't ask for help. And so as we're talking to our leaders out there about asking for help, reminding them that if they don't know how to engage with technology or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, that they can partner. It sounds like what your
Yes.
schools did was they partnered. And then the data part, the collecting the data and just listening to you talk about this challenge reminds us of the deficits. And I hate to use that term because it sounds so negative, but yes, the deficits that we experience across an entire county where you have the haves and the have-nots,
Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
so it sounds like the challenge of having the haves and the haves not kind of came together and mitigated over in your leadership. Those that are connecting with someone who already knows about technology and someone who doesn't know about
Hmm.
technology and putting their efforts together to ensure that all of the students in Riverside County had use of the devices and the educators. So
Yes.
thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to the next question.
Sure.
So our next question, audience, is going to be how have you leveraged? And this is for Dr. White to tell us how has she leveraged networking and professional relationships to create opportunities for career growth? Can you talk to our audience about networking and leveraging professional relationships for the opportunity and career growth?
Yes, one of the things that you have to know is that whatever we're doing as human beings to help an organization and to help people. So I've always made it a point to be a person that was approachable. And then I've engaged myself in different networks. And there are professional networks like CASA, the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators, CALSA, the California Latino Superintendents and Administrators, and then you have AXA, the Association of California. So we can throw all these names out, but I probably belong to about 10 different groups. And within those groups, you network by connecting to people and sharing your skills and also them sharing their skills and becoming authentic friends though. Because you want to be able to say, I've connected that to that person as a human being in this whole networking experience. And then sometimes there are jobs that they might have or are aware of that they can share with you. And sometimes you might have a job that you can recruit them for. But most importantly, I think the strongest part of networks is to exchange best practices so that people are not trying to create from scratch, but they are able to dialogue with someone that's experiencing a challenge, like the graduation rates. When I worked in Reno Valley, we hit the graduation rate data hard, and we had to face it. We were failing, but then as we came up with innovation solutions, then we were able to share that with other people that needed it. So I think it's the sharing of best practices is one of the strengths of actually networking. And you have to get out to network. You can't do it just staying in your office.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
That's a great reminder. You can't stay in your office. You have to get out and network. Join some organizations, not just to join so that you can say your name is on there, but join the
Hmm.
organizations to authentically engage with other like-minded individuals and to share best practices. I heard you say share
Yes.
best
Share
practices.
best practices.
And so with that, we're going to move to the next question. Thank you for those golden nuggets, Dr. White. So so this is going to take a little bit of a twist because we want to know, how do you handle situations where your truth may be unpopular or controversial while maintaining the trust and respect of your team and your partners? So if you can just kind of share with us a little bit about how do you move forward with, those situations where, like, it's not a popular topic or a popular stance. How do you maintain that trust with your team and and all of our educational partners?
One of the things to be strong and credible is you have to be consistent. When people are able to look at you and almost can predict your response because of your consistency.
Mm,
The standing on your truth, I always tell people, especially in my coaching world, don't try to attack a thing in the moment of heat, but let your standards be known day one. I, day one as a principal, day one as a superintendent. I said, this is what I'm about. This is what I believe in. So that when the issue comes up and there is a time when people are challenging it, you've already told them who you were and what you were, and they should not be expecting anything less. You don't wait till there's tension and friction, then you try to define who you are. Know who you are. Talk about being a person of integrity. And I know that in our world, there's always been a separation of church and state.
mhm.
However, my faith is what I live. I don't have to talk about a any kind of the God that I believe in. I could just live loving people, being approachable, looking at their needs, being forgiving, and just sharing as much as I can and pouring into them without talking about religion. But they start to sense who you are. And I go back to being consistent. No one will ever be able to say, I've cursed them out, or I've even cursed in their presence. And they won't be able to say that I've been mean to anyone. I have been firm, but not mean. And so when you say, how do you stand up for your truth? It depends on that situation. Most of the time in my situation, people have said, oh, Judy's not going to go along with that. They said it before I even had to stand up for it because they knew what I was about.
Yeah.
I think the most challenging, though, has been in a closed board session,
Mm.
is when as a superintendent, or even when I served as an assistant superintendent, there was a right thing in a situation. And I just stood. I stood firm. And sometimes you can get outvoted, but I just said, I just want it on record. This is what I think the right thing to do, and stand firm. And then you have to be willing to be rejected. You
Mhm.
have to be willing to be even talked about for the right thing. But when you know who you are, don't define yourself by your role in your jobs, but define yourself by your relationship with the God that you believe in, and have a strong family that you can go back to and say, this is where I get my fun. This is where I get my joy, and not take life too seriously.
Wow. Okay, so first I did hear you say be consistent. So
Yeah.
that kind of stood out for me first, and then you talked about integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and then this last part about, being true to who you are, standing firm in what you believe in. It may not be popular, but standing firm, that really stuck with me. It really reminds me of why we're in the work. We're in the work
Mm-hmm.
for the best outcomes for our students. and sometimes we adults don't make the right decisions for kids, and so to stand firm for our kids is super important. And so I also heard you talk about faith, and I
Mhm,
appreciate that, and I know that they do have that separation, but what I appreciate is that people do know who you are,
mhm.
and they don't have to second guess what you're going to say or do. And so for that, I truly value and appreciate what you bring and what you've the leadership that you've exuded throughout the time that I've known you, and beyond. So thank you for those golden nuggets. I hope our audience takes so much from that question and really utilizes that to stand their ground with their truth and not be so concerned with the consequence or the outcome. Just be firm in your truth. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
So, I'm gonna look for the next question, and this might be coming up to our last question, and then we're gonna have some time to talk probably a little bit about this we book that we see, because I see we have your book sitting
Yeah.
here. So what is one leadership, before we get to the we book, what is one leadership tip that you can give to our emblazing leaders watching or listening today? Give our listeners and our watchers a tip.
Okay. I want to say that I have received over 150 awards in my 42 years in the field of education. I haven't asked for any of them. And the reason why is because I love people. So my tip is love. But let me tell you, I believe in the acronym. So for love, the L stands for listen. You have to listen to those you serve. You have to listen to those who serve you, those who serve the audience. The O in love is optimism. I believe in being optimistic. Anytime there's a challenge, you always say, okay, now what's the solution? The bigger the challenge, I get excited. Okay, we're going to find a solution for this. The V is value. Value every single human being. And the E is engagement. I love people. That's my tip. And for the engagement, if students are engaged in their learning, they're going to learn at a greater level. If adults are engaged in their service, they're going to serve at a higher level. Even board members, if they're engaged, they feel valued. So I always tell people, love, love them.
Wow. I mean, I'm inspired. Just love me. Love our kids, love our
Mhm.
staff, love. And Dr. Judy White said love. She said the L stands for listen, the O is optimism, the V is value, and the E is engagement. I want y'all to love on today and every day. And now we're gonna turn a little bit because I think we have a little bit of time. And we have her book here. Dr. White wrote a book. It's called We. Do you want to talk a little bit about your book?
Just a snippet.
Okay.
Um, this book is called We. And the reason why I wrote it is because I believe that we have to intentionally promote racial healing and we have to intentionally value each other as human beings. And sometimes when I presented this book in other audiences, I asked people, how, in a DNA perspective, how much are we alike as people? And people throw out, oh, 50, 60, 70, 80. But if scientifically you could look it up, we are more than 99% alike.
Mhm.
And we focus on our differences, the color of our skin, the texture of our hair, even our language and cultures. And I love diversity. I love people from different countries, but I do not love it more than I love humanity. So this book is about we, that when we embrace each other as human beings, we can go so much further. I've taken the preamble to the United States and I've listed ideas about unity under each part of that preamble and written it into a poem, and I just use it for sharing. But most importantly, I want people to feel me, not just see me, but know me. But when we look into each other's eyes, you see that I see a human being that is worth being valued.
Wow. Listeners and watchers, I don't know if I told y'all that y'all were gonna have a treat on today. This is one of my favorite treats. I offer the world Dr. Judy D. White. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for watching, and don't forget to love.